I'm Gary C. Johnson. You've seen these billboards and ads that say size matters. I agree. The size that matters is the size of the results the law firm gets for their clients. We have several multi-million-dollar verdicts here in Kentucky. In fact, our firm owns the record for the single largest personal injury verdict in the state of Kentucky. That's the size that matters to you. In Kentucky, give our firm the call.
If you're hurt, injured, don't waste time. Gary Johnson drives for every dime.
Welcome to Simply the Law of Life, a program created by attorney Gary C. Johnson. Simply the Law of Life provides free legal advice and encourages happiness and quality of life. Now, here's Simply the Law of Life with Gary C. Johnson and Keith Casebolt.
Hello everyone, welcome in to Simply the Law of Life. I'm Keith Casebolt, my dear friend and the creator of the program, Gary C. Johnson.
Isn't it wonderful to be here? Wonderful to be alive, my friends. You getting a handle on all of it? I hope. I started last week reading from the book about our self-criticism on ourselves. I didn't get very far, so I'm going to read some more about that to you tonight, and Keith and I maybe get a chance to discuss it. But those of you that watched it last week, you don't have to pay much attention to the fact that I'm going to talk about this Philips respirator again this week in case there's people that are tuned in that have the problem that didn't see last week's program. So let's go to the computer and we'll do this real quick and get it behind us. There's a number in case you need to reach us. Lexington, we have an office in Lexington. We have an office in Hazard and in Louisville also.
Along with Pikeville.
Well, Pikeville's the main office. Surely everybody knows we're in Pikeville. I've been there for 40 years, right?
Just thought we'd add that in.
GaryCJohnson.com, okay. This Philips, they call them Respironics. That's been recalled because of harm it's done to people. There's over 3.5 million CPAP and BiPAP machines that's been recalled in June 2021 due to toxic sound abatement foam used in the breathing devices. Now what happened is this foam that they have in there to help keep the sound down disintegrated over time and would get people to breathe it. And it would cause all kinds of problems, health problems to people because this foam disintegrated. That gave rise to the fact that Philips had so many complaints evidently that they finally voluntarily pulled it off the market and recalled it. If you have one of these machines and you feel like that it caused you harm, and I'm going to go over with you the different things it can cause here in a minute, do not give up the machine. Hang on to it. In a product liability case, you need the product if you file a lawsuit. So hang on to that machine. Don't send it back. Don't say, oh, we're going to replace it with a better, finer one. Nope. Keep it. Period.
Let me ask you, so if you do get a new machine, because if you have a condition and you have to have a CPAP, it's okay to get a new machine, but don't let go of the old one.
Right. Hang on to it.
Okay.
Especially if you feel like you've been injured because of using it. Now, if you feel like you're not injured from it, give it to them. Doesn't matter, you don't need it. If you've been harmed by it, we are filing these lawsuits against my firm, against Philips for people that's been harmed. So give us a call. We'll be glad to look at your case. We'll be glad to look at your medical records and determine whether or not we feel like that this machine is one of the things that caused what's wrong with you. Let's go back to the computer now, and I want to show you the different things that this machine can cause. Headaches, and you sometimes referred to as CPAP headaches, dizziness, eye, skin, nose, or respiratory tract irritation, persistent cough, chest pressure, nausea and vomiting. Cancer, especially in the throat and mouth area, kidney disease, liver disease, heart attack, heart failure, stroke, respiratory failure, hypersensitivity, asthma, and it can sometimes maybe cure you. Now, if you look at the top, machines, these issues may expose users to toxic substances that are known to increase their risk of serious and potentially life-threatening health complications. Now, that doesn't mean that if you have one of these that this machine necessarily caused it, but it would need to be researched to see if there's a connection to the machine if you have any of those problems.
Well, and here's the thing. We've already talked with a couple of people that, as you gave out the information, said, I've been on this thing for 13 years. Mm-hmm. Now, that's 7 days a week, 365 days a year, 8 hours a night of having this mask on with those chemicals going into you.
Prolonged exposure is the one thing that probably more likely than not would have related it to causing the problem. You know, if you've been on it a few months, it's probably not related to any of these things. But if you've been on it several years, then you really need, and you've got any of these problems, you really need to give us a chance to investigate it to see if we feel like, with our experts, that you need to be in the lawsuit to try to recover for what's happened to you, okay?
You know, information, Gary, again, back to the attorney, as we talked last week, being the barking dog. By you giving this information, I know right now we have friends that are watching that are saying, yeah, I've been on that for 15 years. I just thought I had gotten medical problems coming to me from heredity, old age, other things. I had no idea that this equipment could have caused it.
Well, people didn't know. And but now you do, right? So, and we're going to deal with it. And if they cause you harm, we're going to hold them accountable. Period.
Isn't it amazing that, and you have talked about this from the time that I've been with you, about the Pinto car, the FinFin, the Vioxx, all of the things that have been taken off the market that were doing damage, and you said, who do you think got those things taken off the market? It was the lawyer.
Lawyers filing
and the jury.
lawsuits. And juries rendering verdicts. Don't forget the jury.
Yeah.
Nothing happens in a courtroom without a jury. They're the ones that always make the decisions. It's not the lawyers. All the lawyers can do is tell them. Okay? Now I'm going to go back and read some more from this book because I didn't even get started on this self-criticism stuff last week, what she has to say about it. So we're going to go back to the book. I'm criticizing myself for not.
You're already participating because you didn't get to where you wanted to be last week.
I read you the first little section of self-criticism last week, and if you watched the program, I'm going to take you a little further. And this is the book, Can't Stop Thinking by Nancy Collier. She calls this section the misguided protector. Interesting. Odd though it may sound, at the inception of nearly every self-critical thought lies some form of positive intention, no matter how twisted, faulty, or outdated. Interesting, huh?
That is.
Rarely have I found an exception to this rule. In Peter's case, when I asked him what he would risk were he to stop reminding himself of his failures, he said that his criticism made him get things done, and without them he'd get lazy. He was sure that if he stopped building a case for his flaws, he would forget them and get cocky and start blindly acting them out. The positive intention within the negative thoughts was born out of this belief that his thoughts made him better and protected him from his inherent inadequacy. From this perspective, thoughts were there to help him in his mind.
So we believe that if we criticize ourselves, it's almost like a motivation, or that we're not going to make the same mistake, or that we're going to do better because we're being tough on ourselves.
Right, and we're keeping ourselves in line.
Yeah.
So we criticize ourselves over and over and over and over.
Holding ourselves accountable.
That's what she's saying. Underlying it is your mind is that there's a good intention. So let's read some more. Identifying the beliefs behind your self-critical thoughts can be revolutionary. Once you see the beliefs, you can unravel them unearth their faulty nature, and thus strip them of their power to make you miserable. I asked Peter if he would test out his theory, namely, that attacking himself motivate him to accomplish more. When he returned a couple of weeks later, he was smiling, and he told me that he had discovered something mind-boggling to him. He noticed that when he stopped reminding himself of everything he'd ever done wrong, he felt freer, lighter, and happier. Consequently, he was able to get more things done and be more productive. He said it felt like he had taken off a 10,000-pound coat that was bogging him down. Rather than having to approach every new experience as a test to prove his self-critic wrong, a chance to not fail again, he had permission to do what he needed to do, to attend to the task in front of him and no more. Isn't that neat?
It is neat, and it's amazing. And, you know, at first thought, years ago, I would have told you I'm not negative and I'm not critical of myself until you pointed it out. And there's been times in conversations when you and I are talking and you would say, why did you just say that? You just said the most negative thing about yourself. Why did you do that? And I had no idea why. It had become habit.
That's right. So never say anything negative about yourself to anyone else or to yourself, even in jest, because your subconscious will remember it even if you're joking. Don't do it. Okay? Peter's self-critical thoughts had convinced him that they were there to whip him into shape, that he needed whipping in order to function well. But when he discovered was that without them, he was filled with energy and good ideas, quite the opposite of what he had feared. When he stopped believing his negative thoughts, Peter's life became possible. He was free to function well in the present moment. He didn't need whipping after all. Have you ever given yourself a chance to find out whether your story is really true? Are you willing to give yourself that chance? You need to identify a specific criticism or judgment you hold against yourself. She's giving you a test here. Ask yourself, what is the belief about me behind this self-critical thought? If I were to let go of this judgment, what do I fear would happen? Who or what am I afraid I will become without this thought, this self-critical thought? What story about myself is the thought supporting? From whom did I learn this story about me? I think that's interesting stuff. It is to me, folks.
Gary, do we do this? You know, I told you about an individual one time that said, I always expect the worst. That way, if something good happens, it's okay, but I expect the worst. Not realizing that if you expect the worst, it's probably going to happen. But do we do it so that we can say, I told you so, it would never work, or whatever the case may be?
Well, I'll read to you about what you just said.
Okay. Well, I'm there because it was about a month or so ago that I did a project, and it was really good, and I was proud of it. And I was telling Gary about it, and right through my lips came the words, but I'm sure it'll never work. And Gary started laughing, and he said, you just said how proud you were of it, how good it was, and in the same voice you said, but I'm sure it'll never work.
And it did work.
And it did work. But here I was.
Now, here's why you did that. I'm going to read to you.
All right, I want to know.
Okay. You guys ready? Huh? Disappointed, so we don't get disappointed is the section. That was what you were doing.
Yes, and I haven't read this section, so this is going to be revealing.
Self-critical thoughts, in their own illogical way, are also an attempt to protect ourselves from negative feelings. We tell ourselves we won't get what we want, we can't expect to get what we want, and shouldn't even bother trying, all in an effort to protect ourselves from feeling disappointed, ashamed, and inadequate if things don't go out our way.
So, back to when we talked about being in school, when we were all kids. I could have made all A's if I wanted to, but I didn't try. We're protecting ourselves in case we didn't get the A.
Yeah.
I could have made the basketball team, but I didn't try out. We're protecting ourselves if we got cut.
In case you didn't make it.
I could have gone out on a date with so-and-so, but I didn't ask her.
Because she would have turned me down.
Because she would, yes. So we start this at an early age.
And it becomes, as adults, we continue it and continue it. I'll read you some more. I think this is good stuff that, my friends, you need to know, okay? We set ourselves up for defeat, so we're ready for defeat should it come. Essentially, we force ourselves to pre-experience disappointment and self-loathing to protect ourselves from disappointment and self-loathing. Think about that. But telling ourselves we won't get what we want usually ends up preventing us from getting what we want. We've already taken ourselves out of the running, or if not entirely out of it, we're carrying a heavy backpack of negative thoughts that weigh us down and make it less likely we'll achieve our goal. The more we try to protect ourselves from feelings of failure, the more we ensure that we will fail. By inserting our assumptions of disappointment and failure before reality has been written, we're conducting a mandatory dress rehearsal, compelling ourselves to preemptively run through the negative feelings. If it turns out that indeed we didn't get what we want when the time comes, we'll then have to live the feeling a second time for the real show. Will the real feelings sting any less because we got to feel and rehearse them ahead of time? No, they will not. By setting ourselves up for disaster in advance, all we end up accomplishing is an extra experience of suffering. Why make ourselves experience these negative feelings twice rather than once, or maybe even not at all? Why not wait and see whether we need to experience disappointment or shame even once? And if we do need to, why not live them when they're actually called for? Why not save the experience, whatever it may be, for when the feelings are real and not imagined? When we tell ourselves we're going to fail, what we're really doing is trying to control the anxiety of not knowing what will happen. Once we decide we're not going to succeed, we've solved the problem of the unknown. We've inserted a negative conclusion that will no longer have to live with what's unknowable and as yet unwritten. We're not going to get what we want, closed case, anxiety, uncertainty, successfully avoided. We can thus understand the self-critic for what it's really up to, namely, trying to help us escape our desperate discomfort with uncertainty in the future. The antidote to this self-destructive and self-discouraging thinking is to remind ourselves of the truth. We don't know what the future holds. We don't know whether we're going to succeed. We don't know whether we will or we won't get what we want. So why live it today?
You know, I find this amazing as I'm listening to you read from the author. Basically, what we've tried to do is control the narrative to say it's not going to work, it's going to be bad, so that we don't fail in the future. But what we did is we doubled the pain because we predicted the future by saying it's not going to work.
My friends, how many times in your life have you worried about something bad that's going to happen and it never happens?
All the time.
Every day. But yet you have lived the anxiety of that bad in your thoughts. When it's insane when you think about it. We think that if we go ahead and say, well, this isn't going to work, like Keith was talking about, that will somehow make us feel better. It makes us feel bad. It makes us feel miserable. And then if it doesn't work, we get to feel bad and miserable twice.
But we're doing that so that the project I talked about, if it hadn't have worked, I could have come back and said, well, Gary, I told you so. I told you it wasn't going to work. Is there some kind of comfort in predicting the failure?
What did Henry Ford say? If you say you're going to fail, or you say you're going to succeed, you'll be right.
You know what gets me right now is I will guarantee you that we have a friend or friends that are watching this that have $1 million idea that they've been sitting on, that they didn't do, or that they have an incredible talent of doing something that they haven't used, all because of what we're talking about.
I 100% guarantee you that some of my friends that are watching this program right now have extraordinary talents that you don't use because you don't think you're good enough. Your thoughts have told you, yeah, you can't really do that. It's amazing that the talented people I continuously run into all the time that have these great talents, but they think they don't have the talent because of their thoughts. My friends, some of you are doing that. When you have a talent, you just assume that other people can do the same thing. You just make that assumption.
I've got a big statue of a bear at my house that was carved with a chainsaw that this guy did, and I looked at him and I said, "This is incredible." And he said, "Oh, it's no big deal." No big deal. I can't draw a circle. How come we see the talent and we see the deserving glory for other people, but we can't see it for ourselves?
Thoughts, those negative thoughts that I'm talking to you about, those things that will tear you down and make you not succeed, make you feel you're not worthy, make you not realize that you are so unique. I read a thing not long ago that said every person can do something better than at least 10,000 other people. Now think about that. You can do something that's better than any other 10,000 other people can do. Yet, it's like people that can play music. I couldn't play music if I had to in a million years because my brain's not wired that way. But people that play music seem to think it's just so simple that, why can't you do this, you know? I say, I can't do it. The good Lord didn't make me that way.
Oh, trust me, I've had a guitar for 40 years and I can't play the first chord. I would love to, but the good Lord didn't see fit for me to be a musician or a singer.
This is a good time for me to retell the story of my resentment of not being able to draw, be an artist or a musician to play music. Oh, resented it. Oh, yes. And then I finally got ahead enough to where I went to New Orleans and I went out on Jackson Square. This is probably 40 years ago or more. And there was these artists that could draw you pictures just like this. And there was these musicians that could play these instruments, and they were so good at it that you could almost hear the words coming out of them. And they had cups in front of them. And I looked up and I said, "Thank you, Lord, that you didn't give me that talent." Thank you, Lord, that I couldn't play any music, because I would not want to be here with this cup in front of me.
You realized the talent you had been given.
That's right. He gave me a different talent. And he gave me a different way to make a living. He gave me the ability to help people, to make a difference in their lives and to make a living doing it. But that's just the point I'm trying to make is the uniqueness that each of you have. Don't ever let anybody put it down. And I say this a lot, and I'll probably say it a lot more on these programs. Because, and the other thing is, remember, when you're starting to judge someone, you look at them and see how similar they are to you in how they look. Then you realize to yourself, maybe they're that different from me inside too. Maybe they don't see things the way I see it. And you can bet your life they don't. Because each person is totally 1,000% unique. And your brain and how you think and what you perceive is different, just as different as our physical differences are.
But
that's what makes it so exciting and so interesting to be alive and to be human.
But we continually say things like, why can't you see what I'm seeing, or why can't you understand it the way I do? And you're saying there's a good reason for that.
That's right. One more paragraph I want to read you folks before we run out of time, okay? Remember, friends, you're writing the story of your life right now. As you think it, you create it. Rather than generating a fictional failure, we must remind ourselves that we don't know, and indeed no one knows, what will happen in the future. What is helpful in the face of the unknown is the unwritten story, is to show up with grace, try our very best, and be the person we want to be, and have the courage to live directly in the discomfort if it happens. We can live in the not knowing without having imaginary answers to it.
So basically, we can say to ourselves, whatever the fears are, I haven't gone broke yet. I haven't got deathly ill. I haven't died. I'm here today. I'm going to live my life.
And the story of your life is you're creating it right now. You're creating whether or not you're going to be content and happy. You're creating it whether you're going to sit around and sulk because of an imaginary slight. You shouldn't even be sulked from a real slight because it serves no purpose. Pouting, oh my goodness, what a waste. Surely to goodness none of my friends are pouting. If you are, suck it up and move on. You don't need to be pouting. Life is worth living. It's for the living. It's for you.
You just ended all kinds of spats all across Kentucky with that.
Yeah, I mean, it's. We're so vulnerable and so human. It's just amazing.
Before we get off of here, we started out the program. You talked about the Philips CPAP. The machine has caused problems. If you've been on it, you need to get in touch with Gary. You can do that, Gary at GaryCJohnson.com, or call 1-800-337-4002 for all of the information. You may have a case.
And have a wonderful week, my friends. Smile and please don't put yourselves down any, okay? Remember, Gary dares you to. I dare you to put yourself down this week and to be negative, okay?
Yeah, and there went all that pouting. We're not allowed to do it. We can't pout anymore.
That's right. No more pouting either.
On behalf of Gary C. Johnson, I'm Keith Casebolt. Thank you so much for tuning in to Simply the Law of Life. As always, Gary and I look forward to seeing you again next week at this same time.
Thank you for watching Simply the Law of Life, a program created by attorney Gary C. Johnson. Until next week, may you be safe, blessed, and happy.
If you're hurt, injured, don't waste time. Gary Johnson cries for every dime.
I'm Gary C. Johnson. You've seen these billboards and ads that say size matters. I agree. The size that matters is the size of the results the law firm gets for their clients. We have several multi-million-dollar verdicts here in Kentucky. In fact, our firm owns the record for the single largest personal injury verdict in the state of Kentucky. That's the size that matters to you. In Kentucky, give our firm the call.